welcome to another episode of Sage Cigarettes Presents a Ghost in the Magazine. I'm Stef.
And I'm Elle.
And I'm Gabe.
And this episode, we're covering It Chapter 2. I'm just going to set the tone. It's 27 years later. Pennywise is awake again. The movie starts with the Dairy Festival, whatever you call it, and it features Mr. Adrian Mellon, who is one half of a gay couple, and
they experience the shit that happens in small towns like the one I live in.
That part. And they're cornered by a group of boys who beat the shit out of Adrian and throw him into the water. And his partner is devastated, obviously. Unfortunately, that's not the end of Adrian's suffering because who pulls him out of the water? Pennywise. The scene makes me really sad, but I also really like it visually because just imagine that happened to you, you're drowning, and you just see these glowing eyes and a freaking clown pulls you out of the water. No, thank you. So his partner sees this happening, and Pennywise takes a huge chunk out of his freaking armpit, and then all the red balloons show up. The red balloons are everywhere. One thing I made note of is I think that it's interesting that a series of crimes, and this is like supernatural crime, it's still crime. You would think that it would take a big city and like the hustle and bustle and the constant to hide it, but the shadows of small towns are like just as dark, and that shit happens all the time. And not necessarily this like with a clown, but things like that. So then they show all of the losers as adults. Bill goes on to be a writer. He marries an actress and he's working on the set of a movie. And his problem is that he doesn't write good endings. Everybody hates the endings to his story, and he's struggling to make one for the movie, which I'm not sure why they would sign him on to work on a movie if he doesn't have an ending written.
Right.
Already.
That part is weird to me. Like, you're filming the movie and you're expecting him to finish so that you can film the rest of it. Don't you think that they should have waited till he wrote the ending, see how people liked it first, and then filmed it?
Well,
Yeah.
The other thing is, it's not common, I guess, to see the writer of a book be the head writer for any kind of screenplay. And they might be consultants or whatever, but typically they have other writers come in. And also, if he couldn't finish a book and his ending sucked and that was like his thing as a writer, how is he such a famous, successful writer?
That's what I want to know. And it's also like what happened with Stephen King on The Shining, because Stanley Kubrick took that and ran with it, and originally Stephen King hated it. So it's just like not common. And personally, if I was putting my money into it, I would be like, show me that you can do a great ending and you can have the power here. Otherwise, I'm doing it my way. So that's him. Eddie basically married his mother and becomes a risk analyst.
And also, literally, it's the same actress.
I appreciated that instead of being like a 40-year-old virgin, he was in the miniseries, they actually had him married like he was in the book.
Yes, I agree. And I think it's funny that the woman is so similar. Because he was just her on the phone. I love you, mommy. She's like, that's gross, but it's really funny at the same time. Richie, obviously, he becomes a comedian who doesn't write his own material. Ben is an architect, and I like how in the meeting with him, he does a virtual meeting with like his people, and he does this great spiel about how not to make your buildings look like prisons or seem like prisons. There's a cameo from the man who played Ben in the miniseries. He's like the first person to talk.
Yeah, young Ben.
Yes, he played young Ben.
Oh, young Ben, okay.
I was like,
I thought that's the guy from Three's Company.
John Ritter, yeah, and I forget.
I was like, he's dead. Did they have a seance?
I would like to apologize for my lack of clarity. So, while he's doing this meeting, he pulls out his wallet and he has his token. It's a page from the yearbook. I think it's very sweet that he carries that. However, I also think it's very strange because, I'm just picturing myself 27 years out of childhood. I'm not thirsting after anyone back there. You come across so many people, especially him. He's hot. He's a successful architect. He makes mad money. No disrespect to Beverly, but like, move on. So speaking of Beverly, she went full sad circle and went from abusive father to abusive husband. But she's also a successful and very talented fashion designer. Henry Bowers is alive. I know he's not part of the Losers Club, but it's important to note that he's still alive and he was institutionalized, but he is also a 27 years later adult. Stanley Uris is just a regular guy. He's a regular wife. stable job. They don't have children, but none of them have the scars from when they made their pact, when they cut themselves with the glass, Gabe's favorite part. And none of them remember Derry or anything that happened from the time that they left as children until Mike Hanlon calls. He calls to let each of them know, hey, 27 years later, Pennywise is back and he's back on his bullshit.
Yeah, and each of them react. Bill, when he got the phone call, his hand started to hurt. Richie threw up.
Richie's got a weak stomach.
Eddie crashed his car. Well, they didn't show Ben, but he said he felt his heart pounding out of his chest. And Beverly,
Actually handled it the best and was just like, oh, all right, I'll pack.
Stanley started to tear up. He got scared when she
immediately.
realized.
And people will be real quick to be like, oh, fuck Stan or whatever. But it's so understandable. You have those memories rushing back to you of a whole clown like trying to eat you and your friends. And that's traumatic. Put yourself in their fake shoes. And to be perfectly honest, I don't think that I would go back.
No, I don't think so either.
Because, like, fuck that. Ultimately, it doesn't matter. Their fate could have been the same either way. But all of them except for Stan did the right thing and they went back. So Stan, unfortunately, cut his wrist in the bathtub. So he didn't make it to the party. What makes me really sad is when they show up at this Chinese food restaurant, everyone's reuniting for the first time in 27 years. Mike is like frantic. He's frantically missed these people because he spent 27 years with all those memories. Well, they got to forget and they got to leave Derry and they got to build lives for themselves. I'm not all of them perfect, but he had to stay and he had to do all that work. He had to carry the torch and then he had to be the one to give them bad news and tell them they had to come back. And they're all looking at him like he's a crazy stranger. And that just feels so hurtful. I mean, give yourself a minute to remember me, but I'm your friend. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm your friend.
Also, I'm not far enough in the book to understand why all of this happened the way it did. Why did Mike have to be the one that sacrificed himself? It's consistent across both movies. And in the book, Mike is a historian and he's building his own chronicle of Derry's history. And he says in the book, everyone else got to go live these charmed lives. And why do you think we have so many people among our group that are so successful? There's something that I've not quite gotten to yet. I'm on page 700, but I didn't explain it any better in this movie than the last one.
No, and it's not going to. And that's one of the huge issues that I have with these movies. And that's definitely something that we're going to unpack in the next episode. It's one of the huge reasons that keep me from loving these two movies the way that I want to. This is just an all around hurtful portrayal of Mike Hanlon. So you're going, oh, it's not that big of a deal. But he is the only Black friend. He is the only one who stayed. Those are two huge important things and they matter. So that's a thing. So weird shit happens at this dinner. They're reminiscing. I think it's really cute. What I don't think is cute is all the salty glares that Ben keeps giving to Beverly and I almost called him Chris. Bill. Because he has just a generic white guy's name.
It's hard with these movies. I had problems with both of them. If I didn't know the guy from Night Court and the guy from Three's Company last time, I wouldn't have been able to tell any of them apart. And it's worse this time. The only one that was any different to me was Bill Hader as Richie Tozier. They all were just white guys.
I can definitely see that. I really can. So it's important to point out that Bill and Beverly are both fucking married. So, I mean, Beverly, she left her ring and that man was abusive, so she has a pass. But Bill's wife, Audra, didn't do anything to him except for be honest that he's terrible at writing endings.
He got really butthurt about that.
As a writer, I would be pissed if my fucking spouse lied to me about it. It's fucking tell me. Don't let me make an ass of myself in front of people. Thank you very much.
I mean, true, but if he did any research on himself, looked himself up at all, I'm sure that would have been a common theme. I think he was just in denial. She may have tried to broach the subject gracefully and he could just be brushing it off. We really don't know. And that's what I choose to believe. So they're both married, but they're still making googly eyes at each other. So what's annoying to me about this dinner is how impatient everybody is. They ask Mike questions and then they don't fucking listen to the answer. They start freaking out immediately. He's like, I'm trying to explain it to you. Hey, let him talk.
One quick thing, when they're all reminiscing and stuff when they're talking, it seems like they kind of remembered about Pennywise, but they didn't really know the whole thing. They didn't even remember Stanley for a second.
Right.
When Mike brought up Stan, they're like, Stanley? Yeah, I don't
Beverly
know.
did. She said, is Stanley coming or not? And they're like, Stanley urine.
But yeah, it's until that Mike tells them why he brought them back is when they all freak out.
Right. And they're all bad communicators. You can't get any information if you're not willing to listen. And Mike has the key to everything. And so they just really do him immense disservice and disrespect.
Yeah, they're like, what the fuck, Mike?
So they do more of that, and it irks me every time. Like, I literally want to jump through the TV and hand out slaps. Like, get your shit together. So they have their dinner or whatever, and then the waitress brings out fortune cookies, which is when shit starts going crazy. These things start rattling, weird shit comes out. So there's like a weird baby spider fly thing. I hate that one the most because it's like crying and shit. Yeah. And then there's an eyeball with tentacles. There's like a bat wing thing. And then black acid goop starts flowing out from the bowl in the middle. And then there's like singing children's skulls in the fish tank, which I thought was a gruesome touch and could have done without that. That was a lot for me.
It was like the book, though. That
Yes,
scene
it was
more like the book than the miniseries was. But also, he's like freaking picked up a chair and just starts beating the table, and the waitress is just like, "Are you okay, sir?"
That makes me feel like she'd be going down in Derry for her to be so like nonchalant
Right?
about it. Like, you good? Alrighty, I'm gonna bill you for the chair, and I'll see you later. So instead of fortunes on the paper, they each get a word. It spells out the sentence. Guess Stanley couldn't cut it, and then that's when they all go out to leave. Before they leave, there's this kid who pops up multiple times in the movie, and he comes up to Richie and he's like, "Hey, Richie, fun's just getting started." And Richie freaks out and starts shaking him, like, and he's like, "It's from your own show," and that's when we find out that he doesn't write his own material.
And Eddie's like, "I fucking knew it."
I love Richie and Eddie. We're gonna talk about that later because I love them a lot. So this is when it starts getting super gross because everyone's freaking out and telling Mike, like, "Oh, you lied to us." And Bill was like, "You should have told us, Mikey." And so I start getting really defensive, like they're talking to me, which I should not go into movies like this. I'm pretty sure that's detrimental to my well-being. But how are you going to call up your friend who doesn't remember shit and be like, lay out the whole story? He had so many of y'all to call.
Not to mention, they all like shit their pants as soon as he called them. He's not their fucking therapist.
Right. Like, come here and I'll explain everything to y'all, help you remember. But ultimately, it is not his fucking job.
Nope.
His job was just to call y'all. You all went through it together. He didn't lie about that. He lied about some other stuff. But he didn't lie about that. And I just think that's crazy pants. So then Beverly calls the hearings resident. And that's when they find out. But Beverly already knew because she saw them all die in her vision when she was a kid, which TBH, she probably should have told someone.
Probably should have written that shit down too, because it seems like it was kind of gone with her memory and then came back little by little. Write it down.
Right. So she saw them all die. So that's when it cemented that if they didn't come together to defeat Pennywise, it's not just them leaving Derry to perish. They all would have died. She saw how each of them died. So they really didn't have a choice here. They had to come back and fulfill the promise. So after they all leave, the little girl, the birthmark.
That made me sad.
It's really devastating. But I just want to know how her mom, who had just spoken to her, didn't notice to get up and walk away. But like, she just told her.
Conversation with Pennywise,
who is a bastard, by the way.
Vicky.
Oh, I don't like that.
I don't like this Pennywise either. I just don't like him. I'm sorry.
Is it because he's scary?
No, it's not because he's too serious.
I like him.
Stop being too fucking serious. I like him played as a heel.
I like this Pennywise. I think he's actually scary, and I think it's really interesting the things that the actor can do without makeup.
Well, see, I like the visuals. I like Tim Curry's voice better. I think that's what it is.
I do too. I really do.
I like Bill.
Yeah, but you saw this one first, didn't you?
I've seen the miniseries like a long time ago.
I also grew up with the miniseries, so there's that too.
I did too. And when I saw the part 1, I was like ready. I was like, oh, this is going to be amazing. It's a really good thing to stand alongside the miniseries. I think it's, like fresh. But then it got to it chapter 2 and I was mad. So Beverly sees them all die. Pennywise gets Vicky. He gets to her by preying on her insecurities, which you should never do that to children, but he eats kids. So really, does he have any morals? So Mike and Bill end up at Mike's place. Everyone else, I believe, went to the Dairy Town house.
Mhm.
So Pennywise uses Bowers as an instrument in his plot against the losers. So he sends the zombie ghost of Patrick Hostetter to give him his knife, and he busts out of there. And fucking Patrick is driving him around town.
Yeah,
Committing
I'm like,
crimes.
bro, Hockstetter's a corpse. How is he driving?
I don't know. It don't make no sense to me, but that's what's happening. So Bowers is out to get them. So he could pop up at any second time. So when Mike and Bill are together, this is probably the most upsetting piece of this movie to me because Mike does a lot of crazy shit and it is bad. It's all bad. He drugs Bill. He gives him something like a peyote or a
Mhm.
Is like a
hallucinogenic.
root?
It's a root, is what he says.
Yeah, it could be literally fucking anything. And
Yeah.
it's a hallucinogenic agent that the Chacapiqua, I believe is what it's the natives from
Yeah.
Yeah, something like that.
there they used in their rituals. So automatically appropriation. Don't do that. And also don't give your friend shit without their consent. It's bad. This just could have gone about so many different ways, and I think it's gross. And
Mhm.
Bill's like, ooh, I don't feel good. And he whips out this artifact that he says, where did you get this from? I found it. They gave it to me. Just kidding. I stole it. He stole an artifact from natives. That's awful. So then he starts talking to him about the ritual of Chud, and it gives some of the origin of Pennywise, but it's a whole sketchy story. At the end of it, Bill comes out and he's like, okay, I saw the whole thing. I see what we have to do.
As a viewer, I sure as hell didn't. I had no fucking idea what was going on. I'm not to that part in the book yet, and I was very confused.
I just feel like it was unnecessary. So I'm trying to leave the book stuff out of it because my
Yeah.
comments, like I go on tangents about this stuff. So in the book, they go into pretty deep detail about Pennywise's origins. I believe one of the boys sees it in a vision.
Okay.
So it's just a whole hot crazy mess. So they talk about this ritual, and to complete it, they need tokens from their battle with Pennywise, because after the last movie they got into a fight and they were separated. So during the time that they were separated, that was when Pennywise tried to like attack them on their own. So they each had tokens that they had to find. So Beverly's was obviously the poem, that little haiku from Ben, and so she had to go to her old home. Mrs. Kirsch, the old lady,
Mhm.
talking about her fodder, joining the circus, bruh, and she comes
Okay,
out a
Steph.
Her
monster.
father.
Steph,
Her titty swinging.
yes, that's what I was waiting for.
Literally, this bitch comes flying out of the darkness with her fucking like,
Pendulous titties.
mile long titties just swinging. Like she probably used them shits as weapons. Like I'm not sure if she used her arm or her titties to knock Beverly down.
I like in that scene, like you hear the footsteps first before you see
Yes,
her. So
I
you hear
love that
doom,
shit.
doom, 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 and then you see her. It's like,
Yeah.
So she attacks her, whatever. But I love this scene
I know.
because it shows Bill Skarsgård without any of the makeup on. They still have the
Big
headpiece
old
on.
dome.
He's like, run, run, run. You haven't changed anything yet.
Okay, I have to just pause, interject here, and tell you, you have no idea how many times Gabriel has quoted this thing. You don't
You
understand.
haven't saved any of them.
You see what I'm saying?
You
It's
haven't
ridiculous.
changed their futures.
He thinks he's Pennywise, and it's gross.
Close your eyes, Ben. If you don't believe, close them.
And then the laugh, it's
Yeah.
sickening. Okay. She manages to get out of there, and then she looks back and the building is condemned. Pennywise is playing games with all of them because that's who he is. So then Richie goes to the arcade, and his token is an actual token. So he had a situation where he was playing video games with Henry Bowers' cousin as a child, and they finished a game, and he's like, hey, do you want to play again? And the kid's like calling him a faggot and telling him he's gay.
But
And
he only
Bowers
did that because he was being nice about it until
Mhm.
Bauer showed up.
Their whole family dynamic is fucked up. So that obviously put a huge hurt on him because he's closeted. So when Richie's looking for the token, he gets attacked by that fucking Paul Bunyan statue, which I hate, with all the teeth.
That's in the book,
Mm-hmm.
and I appreciated it.
Yes, I love that. So then Bill finds Silver, his old bike, in the shop, and Stephen King is the shop owner. I love that. I freaking shakes him down for $300 for his old bike. So then he's got his old bike and he starts talking to the sewer and he hears Georgie's voice and he gets the paper boat. That's his token. But he also runs across the freaking restaurant kid again and he's telling him that he hears voices in dreams. And he's like, stay away from him. He shakes the kid again. Like, they have to stop touching this kid.
It's just like Twilight Zone where you're like, stop touching kids you don't know.
Yes, you cannot touch other people's children. It doesn't matter how imperative, unless they're literally in harm's way and you're removing them. So Ben already had his. It's the yearbook page. Then Eddie's is the inhaler. And this scene is so disgusting. It shows him when he's a kid and his mom gets quote unquote kidnapped and he has to save her from this leper and he can't do it. And then the leper is still down there when he goes back as an adult and it comes after him, but he was strangling it. And then it throws up this massive goop, caca, water. All over him. His mouth's open, my boy. Like, gross. Okay, so then they have their tokens in their clubhouse. They found stands. They were hairnets. I also noticed there was a Lost Boys poster on the wall of their clubhouse, which I thought was so funny. So then they're like coming back together for the final showdown. And then Bill and Beverly actually kiss. She thinks that that poem was written by Bill. Yeah, he a writer, but he can't write a good ending. So it makes you think that he can write a good haiku. And then they kiss. So they kiss each other, and Beverly looks a little bit confused, and Bill looks like, I'm married. Like, I have a whole wife. I don't know what to do here. So Eddie's in his room, and Henry Bowers is in there and stabs him in the fucking face. So he's like hiding in the shower, and Bowers comes after him, and he stabs him through the thing, and then he jumps out the window and gets back in the zombie car.
Like an episode of Scooby-Doo.
So Bowers leaves, and then they're all sitting in like the lobby area talking, and then the skateboard comes down the stairs. The same skateboard the little kid had from the restaurant.
So that's like a sign to Bill that he needs to go to this festival thing and he needs to save the kid because that's Pennywise's next victim.
And Bill's like, man, I didn't save Georgie. I gotta save this kid.
So he follows the kid to the festival and he starts shouting after the kid. And I was yelling at the TV, don't yell at people's children. You're going to scare them and in front of all of these people. Yeah. You cannot do that. And he's chasing this kid at full force. So he goes into this creepy mirror building. I don't like those because I always hit my face. And then I start to panic because I have claustrophobia. I've only been in there like twice. Maybe I'll never do it. Like my chest is getting tight right now thinking about it. So, and he's trying to get to the kid and the kid's like, leave me alone. And then he's like, no, I'm trying to help you. And then Pennywise is licking the motherfucking glass behind him, which is terrifying. And then he gets the kid and it's really freaking sad. So they have to go get him. So when they reconvene, I believe Bowers goes to the library where Mike's trying to get everybody to meet and attacks him. And then he gets hatcheted in the head by Richie, who he was trying to leave, and then he came back because he can't go anywhere. So then they go down into the sewers. They encounter all of these things trying to get Pennywise. And so they do the ritual. They put all their tokens in the box and then like the deadlight things come down and he thinks he can just put it over. And they're doing this basic bitch chant that doesn't work, obviously. And then Pennywise, he's talking shit to Mike because Mike lied again. And he's like, hey, are you going to tell them why it's not working? Because he scratched out a whole side of the artifact, which is double rude. And it showed how the native people who tried the ritual the first time died, which obviously the ritual didn't work the first time because Pennywise is still there. I don't know why this made sense in all of their minds, but they're also afraid. So in the middle of all that, they're like getting separated. He's coming after them. There's a scene with Ben and Beverly. Honestly, it's my favorite. I think it's well, it's not my favorite, but it's really good. So he's being buried in the dirt in the clubhouse and she's being drowned in blood in the stall. And what saves them is the power of love. And he's telling her the poem. He's reading her lines of the poem, like yelling it to her. And that's what like gives her the power to keep the door open. And like she pulls him out. I really like the scene where she pulls him out. And then that's the end of that.
You are entitled to your opinion.
I know. It gets crazy. And Richie's like talking shit to Pennywise. And this is literally my favorite line. He yells to him, you want to play truth or dare? Here's the truth. You're a sloppy bitch. And he says, yippee-ki-yay, mother. But then he got caught in the deadlights. And Eddie had to save him. And in the process, Eddie thinks he kills Pennywise and he celebrates a little too early and he gets murdered. The losers figure out that to actually defeat Pennywise, they need to make him small enough to defeat him. Easy, right? They're like, let's trick him into a fucking hole. Well, he's a smart clown and doesn't let them get to the hole. So they say, wow, there's more than one way to make someone feel small. So they start talking shit. They literally insult him down to size, which I think is the most ridiculous fucking thing I've ever heard in my life, until he's just a little puddle of clown.
Well, I mean, if they had some precedent in it for him reacting to things that they said, but I don't know that there really is. He always seems to be massively overpowered in any situation. So it's kind of weird that they can just be like, suck my dick, bitch, and he just
Right.
becomes a little clown baby. Especially because, when Richie's talking smack, he just deadlights him.
That's what I'm saying. It doesn't make any sense. And they're like, oh, you're just a clown. And he's like, I'm the eater of worlds, motherfucker. The eater of worlds, who apparently has deep self-esteem wounds, and all it takes.
What worlds? What worlds, bitch?
You've been on this one for billions of years.
And you've been just causing shit living in a sewer in some podunk town. You're not making a big difference here.
So I don't want to talk about the book. When you finally discover what Pennywise actually is and how Pennywise got there, Pennywise's like actual powers, this doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I would have really loved to see a bit more imagination here in ending him, but then Mike rips his heart out.
Which is what they do in the miniseries too, which,
Yeah.
okay, that's consistent, but I still don't feel any better about the mechanism here than I did with the other one.
No. And I honestly feel like the reason why they end up having to do something like this is because this movie is almost 3 hours long. They don't have any more time. But like, save some juice for the end.
Argument that there should be at least 3 of these.
So my argument is that there should be an actual mini series for this book.
Agree.
Like a deeply thought out. Yes. Well, I wouldn't even say a TV show, because then that would indicate that there's like more series. I think it should just be one. I think it should be one complete season, because it's just such a lot of terrible things happen. I mean, like, he's a child eating clown. So to say like, oh, I love this or this is great, it seems awful, but it is just such a deeply horrifying story that for them to really do it justice, you have to take the time with it.
I mean, how many adaptations from the BBC have I seen of Jane Austen novels that are like 5 or 6 episodes that are hours so long? Why couldn't they have done that with this?
They could have. People will take the time. And I don't know if it's because they just want to like make the movie theater money or what, but this deserves time. I just have a dream that someday some brave filmmaker will say, let me do this and let me do it right. Stephen King's a little old, but his son writes books also. And it could literally, I'm just living out my like teenage fantasies here, but it could literally be like how Anne Rice and her son now are finally working on an appropriate Vampire Chronicles series to really capture who Lestat is, because the films have not done him entire justice. And I feel like as much work as authors put into weaving these worlds, like, respect. So, I mean, then that's it. Pennywise is gone. Everything starts to collapse. Richie has a meltdown over leaving Eddie behind, but he's gone. So they get out of the sewers, and then they end up in the nasty water where they first jumped in with their tidy whities, and they have a final moment remembering Eddie, and Richie's crying because obviously he's been in love with the kid since forever.
Okay, I just thought of something. How could they have like no memory of each other and all that shit if one kid's got the page from his yearbook tucked into his wallet and the other one has had a boner for the other one for 27 years?
I don't think he thought about that. I don't think he thought about it over 27 years. I think all those memories just hit him really
fell
hard.
in love again.
Yeah, that would make it really hard. All those.
But what
memories
about
are
the
coming
yearbook
back.
page?
That one I don't have any excuse for. No, there's no excuse for that. He keeps it in his wallet with Beverly Marsh's name on it. How could you possibly forget?
I don't know. I feel like if you are that into someone, it's kind of weird to have a 27-year gap in it, especially where all of your memories around them are gone. There's some magical element to their memory loss, but again, we are not explained the mechanism in this at all. They're not.
I just don't think there's enough time.
Yeah,
I just don't think there's ever enough time. It's a 1,000+ page book.
And also, So, what I know of Mike Hanlon's story, I don't like that they changed it to his parents burning in a house.
I definitely want to keep that for the next one.
Yeah.
Because it's awful. It's
Yeah.
horrible. It's a pointless change, but like I want to say it moves backwards. It's literally regressive.
I feel like it took a lot of the conspiratorial, like Derry has always been like this. There's always been this evil. It's not just the clown. Everyone's affected by it.
Yes.
And I get they had to make decisions to condense things, and they did a better job. I love that the house on Neibolt Street was in this one, but neither one had the standpipe really, and that's a very interesting element. I would like to talk with these writers.
I agree.
Just see
I
what
would
they were
also.
thinking.
Yeah, but they probably wouldn't like what I have to say.
Who are you?
So, and be like, security, security.
I would sit and listen to that panel though. I don't even want to complain. I just want to hear how they made the decisions they made, because I could argue with those decisions later on, but I'm curious, you know?
I'm going to argue in their faces because I understand when you adapt a book to be on film, there are changes and things like that that have to be made, but that should never be an excuse to make the story worse, ever. Because if you can't do it, just say so and go.
Yeah.
Someone else can do it. And that's it.
I think there were good and bad things about both of these now that I've watched everything.
So my favorite thing about this is Richie and Eddie. My favorite thing, because they were honestly, the most likable characters. And I thought it was an interesting thing. I loved that at the end, Richie went back to that fence and he carved the E, an R+E, because he was finally able to accept that. And like, has to be really hard, you reconnecting with your childhood love, and then they die right in front of you, like in your arms. Like he had to wash Eddie's blood off his glasses at the end.
I didn't catch that. I just thought it was blood.
Well, because when Pennywise's little lobster arm went through his body, his blood exploded all over Richie. And that's the saddest thing
heartbreaking
ever. But I feel like he got to check that off his life list, completing that.
I thought it was already carved and he was kind of just
In the childhood scene, they only showed him carve the R+. So I just assumed.
I assumed that he finished it, but that they kept that out because that was kind of like a
hidden revelation.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I mean, I could be wrong, but I thought it
seemed like it was light though.
I know. That's just how it seemed to me. All right. Well, that's the end of the film versions. Any final thoughts?
Yeah, I want to say something that I noticed. I noticed this like the first time watching it. I watched a lot of behind the scenes videos of chapter 1. So when we watched chapter 2, the scene where Eddie goes into the pharmacy to get his inhaler, the director's in the background.
Oh,
the dude with the goatee is the director.
Oh, I don't know the director. I don't know what he looks like.
I only know what he looks like because I watched behind the scenes.
That's really cute. Like he was so excited for this movie to come out after he saw part 1. And he definitely liked it more than I did.
I want to say too that there's a scene where Bill and Audra are on set when Bill gets the phone call. There's something about that scene and like the way that the set's set up and everything that reminds me of the beginning of Pet Sematary 2, where the lady is about to go into this graveyard scene and get electrocuted, and it just brought that up right in my mind. It was just, I don't know if it was meant to be, but it reminded me of another Stephen King movie, which back in like the 80s and 90s, a lot of these movies had little tips of the hat to other movies too. So.
Yes. Let's talk about that for a second. Especially Stephen King movies. My favorite Easter egg is in Children of the Corn when they're driving along, through the cornfields or whatever. The book Graveyard Shift is on the dashboard.
Oh, cool.
And I was like, ah!
Also, I love seeing Stephen King in these. He always made cameos in those 90s movies. So
yes, he's like the horror version of Stan Lee.
Yes.
I am a Stephen King crazy person. I haven't read all of his books, but it is my favorite. And that's so hard to say because of just the absolute craziness that is in this book, which we're going to discuss in the next episode.
There we go. Perfect transition.
So stay tuned for more of that. You can find the podcast on Twitter at GITM Podcast. You can follow me on Twitter at WitchXPudding.
You can follow me at Nocturnical.
And you can follow me at Gabe.
Okay, bye.